inside business group. But one of the wonderful things you know is once you have a deck of slides, you can say everything. And this is actually the core set of theses on these issues. And Kim mentioned something. We are at a very critical point around open standards. We have good things and maybe bad things that ultimately will force good things to happen, right? So in the last 2 weeks, for example, and Kim told you one which I will turn to, a week ago Monday, Adobe announced that they would bring to ISO a complete PDF specification. Now this is very significant because Adobe has, for years, kept a lot of the good parts of it to itself because they fundamentally believed that they were the best ones to control. And so they had let some of it out. They had let something called PDFA archive out to ISO. But you know, how that fit into the general PDF stack, frankly, I don't think they were quite sure. And they had some other things. We had a number of discussions with them, and no, they're the best ones. You know, they'll control it. They know what's right. They know what's right. And then last Monday they said, well, no, in fact, at this point forward, we're going to go through a couple of year period. We're going to take the PDF spec and we're going to make an official ISO specification, factor it correctly, we'll have an umbrella organization, we'll take our time to do it right. Now they've been extremely liberal over the last few years over the use of PDF. There's plenty of open source implementations. Things like Tech for years have produced PDF and something. So they've been what I've been privately calling pseudo-open for a while. That is, in almost every principle, they're open except that they refuse to give up control. They finally did it. Now, what Kim was alluding to is on another front on, let me say, the formats for word processing. There's been ISO specifications in the open document format. There's been an ISO spec last May. It did an OASIS spec for a year, a standard. 700 something pages long. Microsoft didn't like it. It wasn't theirs, right? They produced out of ECMA in 1 year a 6,000 page specification. There has never been a, quote, standard produced in any standards organization, 6,000 pages. They didn't start from scratch. Where did they start from? The Microsoft product specification. It is the Microsoft Office product specification. How many of you code? How many of you write code? Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. Here's your homework. Okay? So you're going to have to imagine here. How much is 6,000 pages? All right. So I did this in Helsinki with real paper. So 2,500 pages, if you think of a stack of 5 reams of paper is about here, 5,000 is about here, maybe 6,000 is around here. So I'm going to give you a stack of paper this high. Go off, do a startup company. Perfectly implement this. Perfectly. Right? Clock starts. Yeah, you venture capitalists want to see this? Because after all, we're going to have perfect interoperability in the world because hundreds of people are rushing to implement this 6,000 page specification. All right? How many perfect implementations will there be? Complete, comprehensive, everything. The answer is 0 or 1. 0 or 1, right. 0 because we know history, and 1 we believe advertising. Right? So in fact, the way it comes down to, in this case, if this goes through ISO, and this is the phrase I've been using today, stop pretending. Stop pretending this open office XML thing is an open standard. This is a commitment to use Microsoft's products. There's no way possible. You can reason any way you want to, but there is no way possible. Because if I implement part of it and you send me this big document, I don't understand half of it. I have to implement more and more, and I never will catch up. So that's what that boils down to. So contrast Adobe understanding they're going to give up control, moving into a really open process with this other situation, which is using the standards process to basically perpetuate market share. That's what it was. I'm slightly opinionated on the topic. But it's the case. And one might say, why not? If the process lets you do it, why not? If you can find a standards organization and in 1 year lets you somehow magically do this, if you can find another international standards organization, which in 6 months, right? 9,000 pages. How many pages do you have to read a month? Okay, it's over 1,000. Okay, and understand them and vote intelligently, right? I hope you have other things that you're not doing in your life. Right? This will never happen again. So whatever is happening, so it wasn't just Denmark that submitted some contradictions. 18 other countries around the world Monday submitted contradictions. Canada, the UK, Germany, Singapore, Malaysia, Finland, Norway, India. Right? India originally was going to abstain because they said, we can't read this thing. You know, so we should abstain. No, you can't read it, so you should vote no. Right? You know, right? Otherwise you're kind of playing into it. So what we're seeing here are tests of this concept of openness. Right? We're seeing edge cases. If the system permits it, why not? But it doesn't necessarily mean that's right. So in this case, 19 countries around the world are saying, no, it's not right. Which means that what will happen going forward is the system will change so that this sort of stuff can't happen again. And that's good, right? Because people don't, in their own, hobbyist, just kind of change the system. There has to be test cases that show what's wrong with it. And I think that this is, frankly, will be a historic test case. So before we kind of really get into this, so I already asked some of you who coded. Let me tell you that you're the minority in the world. 99.9 some odd percent of the entire world do not code. They don't. They don't want to code. Maybe they saw HTML once and it scared them and ran away. You know what that really means? Is that a lot of those people, the 99.9 some odd percent, they don't know what source code is. They hear Java, and maybe in coffee or something else, and PHP, completely. So they don't know what source code is. And they may have a sense, but they don't know what open source is. They don't know what code is. All right? There are a lot of people fake it. That's one. All right? But that's okay. A lot of people have learned about the ideas behind open source, right? And this notion of sharing, but you still, even in the mainstream media, see this term used wrong all the time. They're open sourcing music, and they're open sourcing wine, and they're open sourcing, everything, which basically means they're sharing. Okay, that's what it's come down to. But in the IT or the ICT industry, we've got to be really clear about the difference. And so, as all of us who are in the industry or are in the university, you've got to be crisp in your definition, particularly as you differentiate between standard and open source. So I usually say when we think about standards is they're like a blueprint, right? They're rules. So the Microsoft spec is a rule. If you were to spend 15 years writing a word processor spreadsheet presentation, you should implement all these things. Get started. All right. But there are other rules if you think of the electrical lights here. There are standards related to electricity that not only for convenience say that in this country we have one size plug that goes in. And anything you buy in Denmark will plug into these plugs, right? We also have other rules that relate to safety that you may not realize, but in terms of the size of the wires and the insulation around the wires. And so standards themselves are not concrete. They're just sets of rules or blueprints saying if you ever get around to actually implementing it, you should do these things. So in software interoperability, this usually means the standards are about the formats, the way we represent the information. These days, often in XML. The protocols, how we wrap these things. Maybe we deal with the security or reliable messaging of the information that's going back and forth. And then since we have two things at the receiving ends, what are the programming interfaces that we actually use? And the more that these are open, the more you can build systems out of different parts and intelligently exchange information. And the more they are closed, so the more I have a bunch of applications and I don't tell the rest of the world how they talk, the more I expect people to have to buy my application. And that's what software vendors have been classically terrified of, is somehow if they start sharing data, customers might go somewhere else.